feel nice to sit down? That gospel went on and on, even though Galen spoke as quick as he could. And you sort of have to ask yourself, well, why is that gospel so long today? I mean, I thought Good Friday was long. This is a long gospel. Well, I gotta admit, I prayed to God for a gospel that I could preach on. And he gave me one that had so much in it, I don't know where to start. But the whole thing about today's gospel is that every time I read it, something different would attract my attention. Like right at the very start of the gospel, it says, the Jewish people and the Samaritans didn't like each other. I thought, well, if that's the case, then why is Jesus making a point of going through Samaria? He's trying to get from Galilee down here, Judea down here, to Galilee up here. And the only way through that is Samaria. Unless he crosses over the River Jordan, goes up the other side, and comes back across. Well, that's an extra 3 days, they say. So he chose the straightest route, even though he knew, as a Jewish person, he was going to go through an area that didn't really like Jewish people. And then he gets to this well, and the first thing he says to his disciples is, go into the town, this Samaritan town, and get us food. You can imagine the look on their face, going, Jesus, you go into town. You see what kind of people or how you're going to be met at that particular time and space. We're Jewish people and we're going into a Samaritan town. He says, don't worry. Just go in there, buy some food, and come back out. And then he sits at the well. And so my first question was, well, all right, where did these disciples get the courage to go into this town in the first place? And so then I read it again, and I was going, okay, the woman of the well. All right, look at her. I mean, why isn't she getting water from her own village? Why is she going some kilometer out of the village at noon, the hottest time in the desert, to get water? And the only thing I could think of was, well, she's trying to avoid something. What's she trying to avoid? That's what sort of got in my mind, because, I, through my travels, have been in the desert, and you don't want to be there at noon. You do not. You want to be in the shade. It's not pleasant. And yet, here's this woman going to trek all this way with a bucket to get water and carry that water all the way back to her village in the heat of the day. And so as I was trying to think of all these things that were happening, and then it comes to all the questions that Jesus has for the woman. He has quite the conversation, doesn't he, with the woman? And I was thinking, well, why? I mean, why did this woman actually stay put? Knowing that Jesus was Jewish, she was Samaritan, why did she stay? Why didn't she just get her water and leave? But no, there's quite the conversation. It's like that conversation you have at the Tim Hortons drive-thru. Well, how's it going today? Well, very good. How's it going? Oh, good. What would you recommend? It's that kind of conversation that goes on and on and on. The car, anyway, that's another story altogether. The thing is, when this woman is there, she's talking to Jesus. She doesn't want to leave. Think about that. She doesn't want to leave. There's such a conversation going on that she feels drawn to stay. Wow. That's quite something. And so I after that, I just said, okay, I'm going to go read. I'm going to go get some commentaries and just read about this. So I get the commentaries. I start reading all these commentaries, and they're all focused on the woman. And I'm going, well, yeah, I get it. But what about Jesus? He's kind of a central figure in this story, isn't he? No, let's concentrate on it. So I started looking again at Jesus. And how that whole image of Jesus during that whole time with that woman at the well is such a carry-on for Lent. First and foremost, Jesus comes up to this well and sits down. It says he's exhausted in some translations. He's exhausted from walking to Galilee. This is the Son of God. The last thing you expect is for God's Son to be at all exhausted. I mean, look at the pictures we have in our Sunday school. They're all of a guy who could easily walk thousands and thousands and thousands of miles. But no. It says, John says, wait a second. He's exhausted. The Son of God is exhausted. He wants to sit down. And if you know anything about wells, they're cool places. And so you can imagine Jesus curling up beside the wall of the well because it's cool. He can't get out of the sun, but he can get some coolness from the well. And you can imagine him sitting there looking out over the sand, watching the shimmers go up, thinking, man, I still got to go to Galilee. He's exhausted. And so what can we look at that and say, well, you know, maybe Jesus is saying to us from time to time, look at, you're exhausted, relax, take the load off, sit down. Wow, never heard that in Lent. Let's try that. Let's take a moment of just quiet. Let's take a moment to recharge our batteries. That's quite something. You know, I can imagine Jesus sitting there and daydreaming. Now, I don't know about you. Well, I can imagine you're daydreaming right now thinking, when is it going to stop? When is it going to stop? It's okay. I heard from Chris back there that the snow comes down at 2:30. I'll be finished by 2. Just kidding. But anyway, you were there. And so you look at all that's happening around Jesus in there, and he's exhausted and he's daydreaming. Well, what's the matter with daydreaming? If you take a moment and you just start thinking, wow, I wonder what the forest was like in Canmore today. Or maybe, wonder what the sunset's going to be like. Or, man, I should have got up at 4 in the morning to see the sunrise. Okay, it doesn't really matter. It's just taking time to reflect on God's beauty around us. We kind of gloss over that from time to time. I mean, when I got my flat, I was here during the week, and I don't know, I got a flat. It was hard to think of the beauty around Christchurch as I'm changing the tire. But yet, there's such beauty, isn't there? It just takes us to stop and listen and stop and relax and take a load off. And Jesus gives us that example at the well. And then he goes and he suddenly is without shame at all to listen to this woman. He shows tremendous compassion, doesn't he? Tremendous compassion to sit there and listen and chat and talk with this woman with all the issues that she had. And the conversation was such a polite one. He never dismissed her. He didn't say, well, thanks for all the conversation, but I have to go now. No. He continues on that conversation so that there's such a compassion that she doesn't want to leave. And then finally, there's the breaking down of barriers that Jesus shows us. He shows us that, listen, even though she's a woman, and he really shouldn't be talking to a woman, and she's a Samaritan, shouldn't be talking to a Samaritan, and he's asking for water from this woman who is a Samaritan from the well. He broke down all the barriers that the society around her had. Well, what kind of barriers do we have? Well, you know, we should be showing more compassion and barriers to the point of saying, hey, who haven't I phoned today? Who haven't I phoned for a while? Who haven't I talked to? Give them a call. That's what Lent is about. It's to rediscover those connections. And so with this week ahead, think about that. Think about Jesus at that well, sitting there, curled up next to the side of it, thinking, I wonder when the sun's going to go down so I can continue on. But also, he's by the coolness of it. And by that example, he shows us to take time for ourselves, to be compassionate to the people around us, and to break down barriers wherever they exist. Think about that for the coming week.